Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks. Welcome to another fun filled, action packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host, meteorologist DT from WXRIS.com, the commander of chaos, Colonel Confusion, Captain of Catastrophe, and all around evil scientist. It's Sunday evening at 9:15. We'll do This Week in Weather. And a lot to talk about in this pattern here. A lot of interesting things to talk about. It's not great, I suppose, if you looking for a big snowstorm on the East Coast, but there are some things to talk about. So let's get right to it. I guess we're going to start out here first by taking a look at the overall pattern, and this is useful here. This is as of Sunday midday, the 12Z European here, and we can call up this is big vortex right here. This is actually 50-50 low, believe it or not. We have a little bit of ridging in Greenland, but the big ridge here is in Alaska. See that? That's the symbol for ridging right there. That squiggly line there, right here. That's the symbol for ridging. So what that does is the ridge over Alaska, which places the trough here, and this is our Seattle snowstorm, which has dropped southward. And we have a little wave of low pressure here, and here's our southeast ridge. So we have the Arctic jet here. You see the cold air coming out of Canada right along these lines here, and then we have the subtropical jet here. And of course, the Mid-Atlantic region, Ohio Valley, we're stuck in between the systems. So that's generally what's going on in the current pattern. Now, we'll start out also here by taking a look at the first snowstorm hit Seattle. I posted this on the Facebook page a couple of days ago. You can see this is the big snowstorm. They had, 7 inches of snow in downtown Seattle with a lot of snow, and even more in the inland sections, over 12 inches. So there's more of that coming, actually, a lot more of that coming. So, and as a general rule, as I talked about on the Facebook page, when you have cold and snow in the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast, you don't have it on the East Coast. So while there are meteorologists out there, well, I guess the meteorologists, they say they are, but judging by the use of science and reason and rational thinking, I kind of doubt that they are. We'll continue to tell you that there's more potential bad weather and cold and snow coming for the eastern U.S. in the second half of February. As long as this pattern stays in the Pacific Northwest, that's not going to happen. Now, let's start off locally right here. This is obviously the Sunday evening radar. You can see the snow over portions of northern Virginia, spreading into D.C. and what have you. Also, the northern third of West Virginia, northern end of the Shenandoah Valley, and then the southern end we got some ice down in there. So, and it's also spread into Baltimore and portions of northern Delaware, the northern half of the Delmarva. So it's a decent little snow event, but it's not going to last, and we can see what happens here. By 8 p.m., you can see that this is from the 12Z NAM. We have the ice coming in. So the snow has moved in a little faster, but by 10 p.m., it definitely had snow in northern Virginia. A lot of ice and sleet over the Shenandoah Valley, probably as far south as Lexington, I would think. And then the snow spreading in across the Ohio, Maryland, western Maryland, what have you. And then this is by midnight. You can see that it's now turned over to freezing rain and sleet in D.C., Northern Virginia, still the Piedmont, still getting some sleet and ice. And then into the Delmarva. By 2 a.m., it's pushed on into New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. But it's pretty much come to an end in terms of frozen precip over Northern Virginia and central Maryland. Now, we still have rain coming in from Tennessee, southern Virginia, southern Kentucky, that sort of thing. Now, eventually, what happens is we have this. We can see that the big low, you can see right there, is here, coming out of the Midwest. And of course, we have the big high here. But because this low is so big and powerful and it's so far to the west, what it does is, this is the front, it drives the front northward. So all the frozen precipitation turns over. We do have this high here bringing it down, but this high is too far to the north. It's way up there in northern Canada, and this low is too far, too deep, and it's too far to the west. If this low is here, you would have a much bigger gradient, and you might have frozen precipitation down to the Virginia-North Carolina border. But we don't. We've got it over here, and the high is way to the north, and this is just not good enough in this pattern to keep it frozen. And once it changes over on Monday morning to rain, a lot of rain coming actually into Wednesday. 1 to 2 inches, even heavier in Kentucky and southern Ohio, where it's going to be mostly snow, I think, and going to rain West Virginia, western Pennsylvania. But pretty wet conditions here for much of Maryland, Virginia, southern portions of West Virginia, eastern Kentucky, North Carolina. All right. If we take a look at the last 7 days, look at the temperature anomalies. It's been pretty warm over the eastern U.S., and it's been really cold in western Canada coming into the Pacific Northwest. You can see that here. Here's been the warm conditions. And if we look at the recent temperatures, you can see where the cold air has been. Now, these are the min temperatures for February 8th, so this was on Friday morning. But you can see where the severe cold was. It was not in the eastern U.S. As you can see, temperatures are quite mild. All the severe cold, look at this, minus 40. Minus 25, all the Dakotas, really bitter cold air, and it's been that way for a while. That's what this map is showing here. That the anomalies are way up there in the upper Midwest, upper Plains, the Dakotas, and Montana. And if we look further north, we can see even the cold extending all up to Canada. So there's a ton of cold air up there, folks. It's not like we're running out of cold air. The problem was you have this southeast ridge over the eastern U.S., and all the cold air is locked up in here, in the Midwest and Canada. And the pattern is not letting it come east, and that we'll get into that in just a second. This is the rainfall over the past 7 days. Sure enough, the best rains have been here over the Midwest Ohio Valley, where the fronts have been coming through time after time after time. And then also some pretty good precip of the Northwest, California, and those areas as well. And we can see that even over the 30-day. There you go, the 30-day outlook, same sort of thing. Not much has changed. That looks exactly like this, doesn't it? It certainly does. All right, let's take a look at the pattern. Now, this is from Tuesday, February 5. All right, so let's see what we can find out here. Well, there's our ridge, and there's the big trough coming on the west coast. And then we have our ridge here in the southeastern states. See that? We have a big low here near Greenland, so the NAO is positive right there. The NAO is positive. And again, the ridge is coming down here on the west coast, so there's our ridge, so it's not a very good pattern for the eastern U.S. This is for February 7th. We see more of the same. Here's our big ridge over the southeastern states. I'll highlight it so you can see it. See this peak right here? There you go. Okay, big ridge pushing up to Virginia, Pennsylvania. Huge trough here. Look at this. Big system coming in behind it. This one right here. And there's your ridge over Alaska. The ridge over Alaska is not good for the East Coast. That places the mean trough over the Rockies, the Plains, or maybe the upper Midwest. So that is not the position you want to see. We want to see, let me clear this out so you can see it. We want to see the ridge. If you like East Coast winter weather and snowstorms, you need to see the ridge here. Not here. This is wrong. That's bad. You want it here. See that? And that's not what we have. Okay. And then next we have here, this is for Saturday morning. Okay, yesterday morning. This is the Seattle snowstorm. Here's the monster upper low coming down out of Alaska down this way. You see right here. Here's the big ridge. Okay, and there's our trough in the western United States. And look at this ridge. Southeastern states. So all the energy is doing this. And the block over, there's no blocking of Greenland at all, so you can see that as well. So we still have a positive NAO. We have a negative PNA because you have a ridge on the west coast. See, there's the ridge. I mean, you have a trough on the west coast, so there you go. So all in all, really a shitty looking pattern. Now, in case you haven't paid attention to Seattle, this is what's going on. They have another snowstorm coming for Seattle. Yes, another snowstorm. So this is midday Monday. This is from the Seattle office. Look at Seattle getting 6 to 8 inches of snow. And more in the mountains. Yeah, even on the coast, that's a lot of snow for the coast for those areas. You can see Monday, midday, snow likely. Snow continues to push northward. Snow likely mainly north of Seattle. Mixed precipitation, Seattle south at times. And then becomes another precipitation coming in here. And so it's just a lot of precipitation coming in over the next several days. And you can see this here. This is the morning. This is for Sunday morning. Excuse me, Monday morning. You can see come Monday evening here. There's the low here. There's the next snow coming to Seattle. This is on the RGEM, and then we clear that out, and we look at the NAM. We can even see that here. This is on Monday afternoon, and you can see the next big low is snow in Seattle, but then it may change over to rain here. Your low is here, and you're getting a bit of a flow this way from the Atlantic Ocean, so it may be forcing it to change over to rain, but it's still another snowstorm for Seattle for several hours before that happens. Now here's our teleconnections map. Again, we talked about this last time, so this is our handy dandy guide. So the EPO is your Siberian-Alaska connection, and when it's negative, you get Arctic air from Russia and the North Pole coming into the U.S. So that's what we want to see here. We want to see that. There's our PNA right here, and you want that positive, a ridge on the west coast pulling the cold air southward. We don't have that. It's negative, as we just saw. The trough is on the west coast. That's the exact opposite of a positive P&A. It's a negative P&A. Here's our NAO feature right here. We want that to be negative. Right now it's strongly positive. And here's the Arctic Oscillation. It's very strongly positive, and you want that to be negative. So none of these features that we want for East Coast snowstorm patterns are in place. Absolutely none of them. I think the negative EPO is in place, but outside of that. So this one's okay. This one sucks. This one sucks. This one sucks. There you go. Let's take a look why. But here's the teleconnections for the next 2 weeks. You can see the P&A stays strongly negative. This is the West Coast trough. All right? Strongly negative. And to show you what I'm talking about here, let's go back to this. West Coast trough. There's our trough on the West Coast. You remember this? I showed you this. See the trough? That's negative P&A. There you go. Bada boom, bada bing. Okay. So let's go back to the graph here. The NAO is neutral. You can see that right in this area here. It's pretty neutral, not doing much of anything. The EPO is negative, which is has the ridge, the cold air coming in from Siberia into Alaska into northern Canada, but it doesn't go any further south than that. So let's take a look at this in more detail. Now this is the next 5 days. This is a hemispheric shot. So we have a deep, deep vortex over the North Pole. Let me show you this. See this feature right here? See all the lines around this baby? See all these lines? See all that? That is the positive Arctic Oscillation right there. Classic case of right over the North Pole. Couldn't ask for a better text. Upper low over Alaska, over Greenland, that's a positive NAO. Not good. Here's your trough on the West Coast. The only thing, and again, that's a negative P&A, right? But here you have a ridge in Alaska. We're sending you a connection of Arctic air in, so that's a negative EPO. So there's your negative EPO. But now it's pulling the cold air in, and which is why we're getting readings like which is why we're getting temperatures like this. So the EPO is pulling the cold air in. It's just not getting very far south because of the rest of the pattern. All right. Now this is the 6 to 10 day. Again, this is hemispheric shot. And again, look at this. Very strongly positive Arctic Oscillation. Huge vortex over the North Pole. Positive Arctic Oscillation. The NAO is neutral or positive. The mean trough is still over the West Coast. You can see the blue. This is your negative anomaly right here. And this here is your ridge over Alaska. So we still have the negative EPO. That's the only thing we have going for us. So it is pulling the cold air in to Canada, but it's not getting anywhere east of the Rockies. Or east of the Mississippi River, I should say. If we look at this in more detail, let's take a look at this. Here it is. Now this, I blow this up. This is the 6 to 10 day. And again, there's the ridge on the over Alaska right here. That's great, but we want it here. And here we have a trough on the West Coast. Not what you want at all. So this is not a great pattern, 6 to 10 day. And if we look at the 11 to 15 day, it's even more. It's the same thing. We even have a southeast ridge. At least here, the ridge is gone in the southeast. 11 to 15 day, we actually have a bit of a southeast ridge right here. You see that? There you go. So your trough is here. You have a big negative upper low moving towards Greenland. So that's going to be a positive NAO. And there's your ridge right there. So not a great looking pattern. In fact, if you take a look at the top 20 anomalies, okay, for this pattern, what you get here is this. In the 6 to 10 day, the top 20 analogs produce that sort of pattern for the Arctic Oscillation. 11 to 15 day, pretty warm in the east. If we look at the top 20 analogs for the NAO in the 6 to 10 day, wow, that's warm. And 11 to 15 day, wow, that's warm over the eastern U.S. Not great. All right, let's take a look at more sensible weather conditions here. So here's the system coming in for Monday morning. And you can see the low, what it does is, here's the low right here, you can see it. And there's the cold Arctic high. But you notice what the low goes up to south of Chicago into Michigan, and that drives the warm air northward, setting temperatures, warming, and the warm front gets pushed north of New York City into Buffalo or Syracuse, Albany. It's a pretty big warm push. And that's of course by Tuesday evening, and with a lot of rain coming. So now this is the upper air map. You can see why the system does this. You see how it intensifies as it goes from Oklahoma to Michigan, intensifies quite a bit. And the reason for that is this. We have a negatively tilted short wave. There it is. You can see it right here, like this. See the negative tilt? There you go. There's a next trough coming in this way. All this is just awful looking for the East Coast for winter weather. Okay, it pushes on up. You can see that by Wednesday morning up into Toronto and then up into Maine. And the cold winds coming behind it. The temperatures fall off on the 13th. Very windy on the 13th. We can see a lot of wind here. So we'll be careful of that. And then as you go beyond it, yes, there's another event. Here's the Friday the 15th. Another big snowstorm possible for the Pacific Northwest. You can see it right here. And there's a big short wave right here over the Midwest going to produce another big storm. Meanwhile, you have positive NAO and a positive Arctic oscillation. So this is a low pressure area tracking in that direction. And what happens is, there's a short wave. Now look what happens to it. Boom! Severe negative tilt right here. Remember, it was here. Now it's this. Okay, so that means the low pressure is over the mountains, tracking up this finally the Appalachians. Warm weather on the East Coast, rain, maybe some thunderstorms. Here's the next big trough on the West Coast. That trough on the West Coast does not want to leave, and that means more problems and mild conditions for the eastern United States, especially the East Coast. If we look at the sensible weather, there's the low, like remember we talked about here. So this is the map, the surface map. There's the low over Illinois, passing just south of Chicago, close to it. And look at the very strong south winds here, feeding up the warm air. There's high pressure off the coast, so we're getting strong south winds, temperatures warm up. Big snowstorm in Iowa, Wisconsin, maybe northwest Illinois. And that is for Friday, February 15. And then look what happens afterwards. That low tracks up, same looking pattern, same looking map as we just saw, up into the Great Lakes. The pattern we are in, this is what's known as a locked-in pattern. The pattern is repeating itself. As long as we keep getting this and this and this and all these other different patterns and this sort of pattern, the troughs on the West Coast, and that's what you're going to keep getting. You're going to keep getting these systems doing this right up through the Great Lakes. East Coast rain, big cool down, East Coast rain. Now, some people are looking at a potential event at day 10. Could it be a big one? I've seen weather weenies and weather Twitter and all these other people freaking getting real excited about day 10. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. Now this is what they're looking at. This is the GFS here from Sunday afternoon. So you can see the cold air comes southward on the operational GFS, and the front is here, a bit of a low here, and it's pushing the cold air southward. See that? Okay, and people are like, well, maybe there might be something. This is high pressure to the south, bringing up the warm air. So that's a day 10 outlook. And if you look at the ensemble, the GFS ensemble, it's actually colder. The front is actually further south along this area here, and you can see an inverted trough like this, and then getting some cold air, and this potentially could be snow or ice on February 20th. Indeed, if we look at the ensemble precipitation, we can clearly see that. There you go. Overrunning in the cold, the temperatures, that could be something. The problem is, this is the GFS, and again, this is the overall pattern. This upper air map really does not support this. These two things are opposites. They just are. And you can see we have a deep trough again on the West Coast. We have a bit of a ridge here. See that ridge here? This is like here. So all the cold air is staying to the north. We have Pacific air coming. It's just, there's no reason to think that this map is going to be the correct map. I just think that this is Bravo Sierra bullshit. And if we look at the GFS ensemble, again, the trough is over the Rockies and the southwestern states. There's no reason to think that the front might stall somewhere over the East Coast, but I don't know if there's going to be any sort of significant snow or ice with it. I'm very, very skeptical about that whole idea. This is the European model, and we can see the European also has this. It has the front coming through on February 19th, 20th, fairly far to the south, and it's trying to bring the cold air in here and here, okay, and the rain going over to snow or ice. That's what it's trying to hint at. And if we look at the upper air map, again, the problem here is look at this enormous ridge over the southeastern states. Look at this thing. Wow, over Florida. So look at the ridge. That's way to the north. So you've got a deep trough here, ridge here, cold air doing this, staying to the north. I don't see any reason to get excited about February 20th. I know this looks promising. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. The upper map says no. Here's the ensemble. It also wants to force the cold air south, but the cold air, again, it's along the Pennsylvania Maryland border, maybe, or into central Virginia, maybe at best. And I'm skeptical of that. And again, the ensemble is same as this. This is the operational. Look at the ensemble. Huge ridge over the south, over Florida, I should say, right here. You can see that. Trough is here. Okay, you've got nothing over Greenland for blocking, so all the flow is like this. All the cold air stays all over New England and the Great Lakes, but it doesn't come south. Not in that flow. Not when this is going like this, west to east. If you have cold air, again to highlight the point, the cold air is here, right? Okay. If your flow is doing this and this, that cold air is not coming south. It just isn't. Now let's take a look at the MJO and Madden-Julian oscillation. You can see the figure right here. It is now in on the edge of phase 7 and 6. You can see it right here. There it is. And the question is what happens to it. Now the MJO is pretty promising. You can see all these models here. So over here this is the Australian model right here. And this is the Canadian model. And this here is the European model. And notice what all these models do. They take it into phase 8. And then phase 1, even the phase 2 eventually. But you can see, follow the green line. There you go. Okay. There you go. By around February 20th, and then phase 1, March 1st. Now, what does that mean? Well, typically, if you have a El Nino, phase 8 in February is the snowstorm pattern. This is a very powerful looking pattern. You can see a huge negative anomaly over the East Coast. Very strong blocking here. Okay, over Greenland. So this is the classic setup that you want. Here you have your negative EPO. You have a big positive PNA on the west coast. You can see your ridge right here. Okay, so it's a positive PNA. You have a negative Arctic oscillation and a very, very negative NAO. Everything you could possibly want. But I'm skeptical about this. I just don't know if this is going to happen. We're having a lot of difficulty getting that negative NAO to develop. Now, of course, the other issue is that are we in El Nino? The El Nino is weakening. We could meet the case we're in neutral conditions. If you're in neutral conditions, it's the same sort of wonderful looking snowstorm pattern. There's not much difference between this and this. And then to go into phase 1 in March, this is also stormy looking. A lot of blocking here above normal heights on Greenland and northern Canada. Very strong here, and then deep trough over the southern states off the East Coast. This is also a snowstorm looking pattern for March. That's got possibilities as well. And then if we look at again a neutral, if this is if we're still in El Nino, we can again see a pretty good looking pattern here with a big ridge on the west coast. You can see that. Oops, let me call my marker here, a different one. Big ridge on the west coast, a big trough here. Potential storm coming up the coast of some capacity or another. So that's got possibilities. So all of these have possibilities, but again, these are the MJO here, that might take place, but the problem is that for whatever reason we have to get rid of this trough on the west coast. Every one of these things has a ridge on the west coast. Look at that, ridge on the west coast, ridge on the west coast. See that? They all have this ridge on the west coast. Every one of them. Ridge on the west coast. There you go. Here you go. Ridge on the west coast. See it right there. And we have to get rid of this trough on the west coast. We just have to. Otherwise, these are not going to happen. So, is it possible we may see something in late February or March? If we can get the pattern to shift, yeah. But we got to get it to shift. And so far, I'm not seeing any sign of it. So, I'm not officially killing the winter, but I'm not particularly happy about the next 2 weeks. I don't think much is going to happen the rest of February. Based upon this, this is the 240th, this is February 20th. Maybe after the 24th or 25th, it might shift. I don't know. But I'm more optimistic about March than I am in February. So we'll see. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll see you on the Facebook page and on the Twitter page.